Hi guys. Sorry, I feel like disheveled. I just kind of ran in the door like 2 minutes ago, so I apologize if I take a second to get settled. All right, so let me know if you sign on. Just like say hi or type something so I know that you're there. And feel free to kind of type any questions or just jump in with thoughts as I'm talking, as I'm doing the video. So today I want to talk about fear. So this is kind of a big topic, right? So today I'm just going to kind of talk about it in a pretty specific way. And then I'm going to do a couple other videos about it because I feel like it's such a rich topic, right? One of the things that made me think about fear there's lots of things that made me think about fear. But recently, and I posted this yesterday, was kind of a link to my blog post, but I kind of wanted to just talk about it, is this experience that I had where I had a stomach flu last week, right? Not the end of the world. People get stomach flus a lot. No big deal. But part of what went with that is this really significant weakness where I felt kind of like I was going to pass out if I was standing up, and I just felt really depleted, really run down, really weak, which isn't a surprise, right? Because I had the stomach flu and I wasn't eating and I wasn't feeling so great, and stuff was coming out, right? Like things were happening that made it reasonable to feel weak. The fear, though, came from how this feeling of weakness, this feeling of almost passing out, was reminiscent of a time in my life when I also had those symptoms, right? When I had weakness, when I had feelings of almost passing out, when that was really common for me, and it was completely debilitating and prompted hospital stays and was driven by this like erratic blood pressure dropping and no real reasons, right? No real clear answers to why that was happening. So it was such a desperate time in my life. It was such a negative time in my life. It was such a scary time, right? Because you can't function when you can't stand up, when you're too weak to stand up, when you can't sit up without passing out. It makes sense that you would have fear and nervousness and anxiety during that time. But that was many years ago for me. The last time that happened significantly for me was 2011, which is quite a while ago now, right? And it's something that I thought I had really worked through and done a lot of work around. I feel so much healthier now. I've done a ton of things to get myself into a healthier place. But that kind of fear is not rational, right? So when you're getting that kind of like wave of fear, it just reminded me of this time in my life where I felt so out of control and so helpless and so sick, and just really unable to function well. So it was this kind of weird experience, right? Because it's one of those things that comes up for you periodically where you're like, oh, I thought I did a lot of work on this thing. I thought I moved past it, but maybe not, right? Maybe there are still some emotional things that need to be worked through related to this issue. I think that for me, at least, and maybe from some of my other women out there who dealing with chronic illness, who have dealt with chronic health symptoms, there often tends to be a lot of fear, right? It's like fear around what symptoms are going to pop up out of nowhere, or fear around what symptoms are not going to go away, fear about what symptoms you're just going to have to deal with, right? Or fear around the future, around uncertainty. There's so many things that can trigger fear, I think, when we're dealing with chronic health issues, that it can be really, what's the word? Like, you can get kind of stuck in it, right? You can get kind of stuck in the fear because there's so many different things that feel like they're there looking at you, like ripe to be fearful of. So I think when we're dealing with health issues, it's always, always, always important to like deal with the fear that's associated with some of those health issues. And really figuring out what the fear is. For me, I kind of sat with this for a while and I was thinking like, what am I fearful of? Am I fearful of losing my freedom, of having significant symptoms again that mean I can't live my life? Am I fearful of this turning into something more serious? Was it just sort of like a memory, like just a visceral reaction from the past? And maybe it was kind of all of those things, right? So I think that it's important to sit with the fear, kind of notice it almost as an observer, right? Where you're having some healthy detachment and distance from it, so that you can kind of sit with it and observe it as you're trying to like evaluate it, right? You're trying to sort it out. There's not an emotional attachment to it. So that takes work though, right? And it takes some discipline to be able to say like, okay, I'm experiencing fear right now. Let's think about why that is, right? So being able to sort of look at it objectively and take a moment, take a step back from it, so that you're able to really evaluate what is the source of the fear, right? What is the thing that's driving that fear? And then you really have a decision to make. Do you want to walk down the road with that fear, right? Do you want to sort of sink into it and dissolve into the fear and let yourself be overcome by the anxiety that goes along with it, and the nervousness and the feelings, the internal physical feelings that go with fear? That's a choice, right? You could spend time going down the road with it and really sink into it, which I think we tend to do on default. Like that tends to happen if we're not paying attention to our emotions and to our thoughts and to our patterns, right? That can be something that we just kind of fall into without thinking. So what I'm encouraging you to do is intentionally not to do that, right? To observe the fear from a detached place, from a distance from it. And then really think about, is this rational, right? What is the likelihood that this is happening, this thing that I'm fearful of? Where is this coming from, right? What is driving this fear? And then actively and intentionally choosing something different, right? Choosing a different reaction. So for me, at least when I was dealing with this last week, I was trying to go into a place of gratitude and love and self-compassion, and to really be able to say like, thank you for this experience in my life. Thank you for this thing that happened to me that taught me so much about health and so much about wellness and nutrition and holistic health and all of these things. It really got me to hit the brakes in my life when I for sure needed to. It changed the course of my life in a lot of ways. So can you connect with the experience of gratitude around that? I had to intentionally do that, right? Think of things that I was grateful for that were connected to this experience that was precipitating the fear, that was initiating the fear. And then really also be in a place of love and a place of self-compassion and kindness to yourself, right? Because this is all going on in my head. Like there's no one else around. There's no one else involved in this discussion with me. But being in a place of compassion with yourself, where you can be kind to yourself. You can choose kind language. You can choose to accept where you are and be able to make an intentional choice to love yourself during this process, to be compassionate, to be kind to yourself, to choose something different than the fear in that moment, right? And there's something really empowering about being able to be like, hey, I'm experiencing fear, but I'm not dissolving into it. I'm not going down the road with it. I'm choosing to go a different path, and I'm choosing to make a different choice. I'm choosing to experience something different at this moment. And that doesn't mean that you don't do the work associated with the fear, but it just means that you do a component of that and then walk away from it, right? You don't have to collapse into it and wallow in it. You can make a choice for something else and then move towards that, right? So we're going to talk a little bit more about fear in here, because I just think it's rooted in so many different things, right? There's so much that triggers fear. And then I was thinking about how often we make decisions based on fear or coming from a place of fear, right? So I would really encourage you to think about that. Like when you're making a decision in your life or you're choosing not to do something, are you making that decision out of a place of fear? Are you making choices in your life from a place of fear, right? Fear of success, fear of failure, fear of being vulnerable, fear of injury or something to yourself, right? That may be irrational in a way. But what are you basing decisions on? Is there a time that you're basing your decisions on a place of fear, from a place of fear? Which if you're being honest with yourself, I do that fairly regularly, right? And I feel like I'm pretty introspective about some of this stuff, but really noticing and being aware of what keeps you in a place of fear, and if you're acting from a place of fear, if you're making decisions for your life, for your relationships, for your family, for yourself, your career, whatever, your health, from a place of fear, right? There's so much fear around even just change, even just changing something. We'll stay stuck in things that aren't good for us just because there's a fear of changing, right? So I would really encourage you to think about the role that fear plays in your life. And then some of the things that I'm super interested in are how psychological factors or how emotions, thoughts, beliefs, all that stuff affects our health, right? Affects our physical health in addition to our emotional health. But when you're in that place of fear, right, and you're feeling it wherever you feel it in your body, whether it's like a tightening in your shoulders or a tightening in your stomach, or your heart starts beating fast, or your blood pressure goes up, this is your sympathetic nervous system, right? This is your sympathetic arousal, as it's called. Your fight or flight system has kicked on because your body doesn't know that there's not a tiger jumping at you, right? Your body doesn't know that, like, oh, you're just fearful of being vulnerable with your partner, right? Your body doesn't differentiate that. It doesn't know what the trigger is, right? The fear that you're feeling has the same physiological reaction regardless. So if you're nervous about something, if you're having a fear response, if you're having some sort of thing that's getting you kicked up and you're feeling anxious about, that's sympathetic arousal, right? Sometimes you might get sweaty palms, you might have to go use the restroom. There's lots of different things that can trigger that. But that is a fear response, right? And your body responds accordingly based on whatever your thoughts are, based on what's happening, whatever your emotion is, your body will follow. So your sympathetic nervous system will get activated. It will kick up, ready to jump into action. So when your body is in that state of arousal and is in that sort of sympathetic drive, your immune system is not really able to do its job, essentially. You need to be in really a place of your parasympathetic nervous system driving the show to allow yourself to digest your food appropriately and absorb your nutrients, to be able to let your immune system go in and do its job getting rid of viruses and bacteria and things that it needs to get out of your body. So when you're in that constant state of stress or fear or sympathetic arousal, your body is not doing what it needs to be doing to keep you healthy, right? It's not able to absorb nutrients. It's not able to digest your food. It's not able to let your immune system do what it needs to be doing. Your body is on alert, right? And you're even having increased pain sensitivity. You're having increased muscle tension, right? Nothing is in a state of healing and restoration when you're feeling that type of fear. So when we have sometimes these odd, like ongoing physical symptoms, and we're like, well, I don't know, there's nothing really significantly wrong with me. My blood work is okay. Doctor's saying I'm fine, right? But I still feel fatigued. I feel like I have muscle aches and pains. I feel just sort of mentally exhausted. I'm feeling lots of different ways can kind of go into it. Having chronic headaches, right? There can be lots of sort of symptoms that go along with this kind of increased sympathetic arousal or being in this kind of stress mode, this activated place. And it doesn't really give your body the opportunity to do the healing that it is built to do, right? We all need time to actually restore and let our body work in the way it's supposed to let our immune system function the way it needs to, right? Are you someone who feels like you're catching every cold and virus and everything that's going around? I would take a look at your stress level. I would take a look at how often you're feeling like you're in this place of kind of overdrive, or you're in a place where you're feeling stressed or tense or frustrated, right? Fear is one component of it that drives this kind of sympathetic response. But fear is a common one, and it looks like a lot of different things. So I really want you guys to think about that, and really be able to kind of ground yourself as you're trying to deal with some of the fear that comes up. For those of you who are interested in more of like a Ayurvedic, or those who are interested in yoga and those kinds of pieces, fear is really associated with the root chakra, which is the lowest one on your back. So there's some really interesting kind of grounding practices, or things that you could do that are really aimed at increasing your feelings of security, increasing your feelings of safety, because fear is such a primal feeling, right? That it's really connected with some of those other really basic needs, like your sense of safety and your sense of security, and it kind of all goes into the same pot. So sometimes it can kind of show up physically, sometimes, right, for folks in like your lower back region, where people have sort of chronic back issues. One school of thought is that is kind of related to that really root chakra area for people. So that could be kind of imbalanced for folks. If you're having chronic anger, chronic fear, chronic safety, security, even financial issues, all kind of are in that same realm. Which I can talk more about if you guys are interested at some point. But I would encourage you to do a couple things after hearing about some of this, right? Is really think about times during your day, during your week, where you're in a place of fear, and then stepping back from that and being able to like observe it, but disconnect from that emotion, and being able to look at it, evaluate it, and then choose a different action, right? Choose to be in a place of love, choose to be in a place of self-compassion around it. And see how that shifts your energy, see how that shifts your focus. It kind of takes the wind out of the sails, right? It takes some of the potency out of the fear. So try that and kind of let us know how it's going, right? Check in, talk about it a little bit, because it's something that you kind of need to do over and over and over again. And notice also, like, if you're making decisions, if you're aware that you're making decisions based on fear or from a place of fear, and what you want to be doing about that instead. Journaling can be really helpful. That's always a good one, right? If you're needing to just kind of like get some stuff out on paper, like what is it that I'm fearful of in this moment? Or what is it that's making me nervous about this particular decision? Where is this fear coming from? And just let yourself go, right? See what comes up for you. You can do this while you're talking, right, with someone else too, but it can be helpful to just sit quietly and do it by yourself, and just letting your thoughts flow to get to sort of the bottom of some of that fear. So maybe at some point I'll do a video where I talk about different types of fear, because there's all different flavors of fear, which is really super interesting. But let me know what you guys think, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow probably. I think I'm gonna do a quick meditation video tomorrow afternoon to kind of just like settle into the weekend and relax and restore after our week. So, all right, I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a good night.